Okay, well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is going to be fun. So we've got a little ride along here with Seattle Police, so I think you guys will enjoy it. Let me start with just some quick intros. So my name is Manish Desar. I'm a managing director in Accenture's Applied Intelligence practice. So absolutely a data nerd, and I'm totally okay with it. My practice does data engineering, machine learning, predictive analytics, visualization, all those kinds of things that you all live and breathe every day. And I'm excited to show this story at SPD because I think you're going to see flavors of data integration, modeling, visualization, and all those things, but in a way that's going to be very unique. So before I ask Greg to come up here and talk about it, the data analytics platform, which is the platform of the story we're going to walk you guys through today, I think it's really important and kind of unique, and I'll share with you why. One, at Accenture, we get to work with a lot of different clients in a lot of different industries. And while all of the clients are unique and enriching, there's something special about doing a program that benefits the citizens of Seattle, the officers of Seattle. It's kind of a way to give back to the community in a way that's positive. So I was very thrilled to have the opportunity to work on that, and really awesome program kind of from that perspective. Second thing, I think it's great to be able to help advance the digital capabilities of the city of Seattle as well as the police agencies in Seattle, right? I think a lot of our governments and cities, as they start to make a push to the smart cities initiatives, are going to start to see efforts like this. And to find a way to contribute to that, I thought that was a lot of fun too. And lastly, I think what you guys are going to see here is going to be very unique. If you've been at the Tableau conference before, I'm sure you're going to see lots of data sets and visualizations sort of all over the place. But to apply it to public safety, I think you're going to see some stuff today. It's going to be very unique and very different from everything else that you'll see at the conference. So I'm thrilled about that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So with that, I'll introduce my partner in crime prevention here, Greg, who will walk us through the story, and we'll save some time for questions. Thank you so much for joining us. Greg, over to you.
Thanks, Manish. I'm here. Everybody hear me okay? Great. Welcome this morning. Thanks for joining us for our presentation, Neighborhood Choices, and I think you'll enjoy this one, hopefully. So we're inviting you to take a ride along with us, a police term. I know you're expecting donuts, but we're going to ride bikes instead. So, see, modern day policing relies on a lot of things, and data has become an increasingly important one as any crime fighting tool, and I think you're going to see why here. So, the agenda for the day. Government agencies and police departments have historically not been able to meet the demands of the public when it comes to answering questions in a timely manner. Primarily because, cash-strapped environments and many, many disparate data systems. So today, we're going to take a ride along, and we're going to look at what the perception of the police is. I'm sure everyone here has opinions of their own. How do we respond to those opinions, and how does technology help us do that? So if you do a search on the internet, there's three main areas that the public generally has perceptions about the police. One is the use of force, and it's a kind of an emotional slide there. It begs the answers to questions of, where is use of force being used? Why is use of force being used? Who's it being used on? And when the police use force, are they doing it with proper training? Another one is in response to crisis. People, homelessness, people with chemical dependency issues, people with mental health issues. The same kind of questions. Are the officers properly trained to deal with that? Where is it occurring? And then you get maybe into some operational questions for the police. Do they have the right officers at the right place at the right times? And the last topic we're going to deal with today are stops and frisks. We talk about it in Terry stop. Another word for it is Terry stops. It's about a court case in Ohio that sort of sets up the constitutional, the proper constitutional way to conduct the stop and frisk. So you might hear me refer to it as Terry stops later on. Same questions. The training, are the officers doing it in a constitutional way? Another topic, and we'll deal with on the stop and frisks, is why are they doing them? So they're primarily doing them because the officers perceive a problem there, such as someone has a weapon or someone's a felon. So the outcome there should be potentially an arrest or a detention of somebody or removal of a weapon. So back in 2013, coming back to Seattle specifically, we weren't able to answer the questions. So the Justice Department were going to sue the city of Seattle, and instead we entered into a memorandum of understanding with them and had a settlement agreement by which we had to produce the answers and a system to do that. So real quick, there's some powerful wording there in the middle if you guys just want to take a second to read it, because it talks not just about what the police have to answer for, but the safety of the police as well as the safety of the public. So with that, how do we respond? So the status quo wasn't going to work. The paper reports we had, the disparate systems trying to pull it all together, answer these questions, we couldn't do it. So we partnered with Accenture and chose Tableau as a platform, and the data analytics platform was built. So a little bit about the platform. You can see our source systems over there, a couple different ones. I'll go through them real quick just to familiarize you with some of the data we're talking about. So of course, I already talked about the use of force, and we have the Terry stops or the stops and frisks and the crisis things there. But we also have a records management system. We also have a 911 call system or the CAD system. We have human resource data about officers, their demographics, as well as training data, as well as legal data. So it's a high level of what we all Accenture helped us pull together into what we refer to as the data analytics platform, or DAP, with our SQL Server database there in the middle. And so we're using SQL Stack, SSIS, transform the data, came up with a common identifier, and we're able to produce these reports for a number of different purposes. A little bit about some statistics. So we went from nothing in about 2016 to, in 2019, pulling in about 90,000 records a day. We're logging data errors for data custodians to fix them. We have a data governance program, which was part of the consent decree. I'll talk a little bit about that later. We have approximately 20 reports. 400 end users, that's probably a low number there, because on the operational side, it's available to everyone. They can look at their own data. And we have some high priority errors that are logged to make sure that the important topics can be answered in a very timely manner, such as the use of force, the crisis, and the Terry. Care a little bit less about maybe where the people are working, but those subjects, at a moment's notice, the Justice Department wants to know. So some of the enabled capabilities. We are now in compliance with the Justice Department at the end of this year. We've had 2 years of compliance that we've sustained, and we should be out from underneath the settlement agreement. Enhanced insights into the data, data-driven decisions, as well as the improved data quality with the data governance program and the error reports. So we're going to get to the good stuff now, right? The reports. So we're going to take a turn on our ride and take a look at the different, whoops, let's get backwards. Sorry, I've got too many little mouse and things going on here, so I'm not using a clicker. So we have the annual compliance reports to build the trust and legitimacy. Those are the ones that go out to the Justice Department, but also to the public. We make them all available online. We'll talk about those a little bit. Community engagement. We use Tableau Public to make data sets as well as suggested ways of formatting reports available to the public. This has headed off some public requests for records, which is a good thing. It lets our legal department do the harder ones. So that's good, right? And then from an operational standpoint, we have a chain of command set of reports to let sergeants know if their officers are ready to be deployed to the street. Lets lieutenants review the sergeant's work and captains review each of those. Like I said, we have a data governance program. We have a set of reports around that. And we also have a set of reports to help with the public request for records. So we'll take a look at each one of these as we take our ride. So first to the trust and legitimacy. These are just sort of the headers of the reports. We do them quarterly. Get into these a little bit. Going to good on time. So these are all on the City of Seattle website. So real quick here, it's a use of force graph. I just wanted to show that, these are some high-level trends. Level 1 and level 2 uses of force. Level 3 are the more severe ones. We tend to report on those separately. So you can see just some general ups and downs here. But when you get this data, you start diving into it deeper. Like why are the trends this way, and or like what are the demographics of the people they're about. So I want to do a little dive in here. And I had a little bit of technical problem with this, so we have to close that. Bear with me a second. Okay, good. All right. So again, we were talking about use of force and the trends in use of force. And we also, the DAP, I said, lets us bring things together, right, that we weren't able to bring together. So this is an illustration of bringing together when we go out and we encounter the public and it's deemed a crisis event, such as someone who is having an overdose, perhaps, or is having a mental health issue. And unfortunately, we can't resolve it without using some force. This is an illustration of, on the left side there, you see a body map. That's where on the body the injuries were incurred by the subject. In the middle, next to that, you have the force and the resistance, the force used by the officer, the resistance by the subject, and then the injury on the right. So you could see most of them are complaints of pain. Anytime someone complains of pain, the officer generally has to fill out the use of force report. So the red ones there are the level 3s. And when I click on this, you're going to ask yourself, well, why? That doesn't seem like, let me see. So some fractures and some bruises, and I'll go there in a second. But see, like treatment refused. And why is that a level 3? It probably wasn't that bad. Because when officers have to report force and the incident it gets reported at the highest level. So maybe there were some minor things, but then there was also a dislocation or a fracture. The whole incident gets reported that way, even the bruise. So I'm trying to find those dislocations because that was a good one. It's too small. All right, so you see it primarily on the shoulder, right? And then they resisted handcuffing. So the question I think you'd ask yourself is, when officers are trained and know that they're going to perform a handcuffing, is a dislocation a common injury, or is it atypical, right? So perhaps it is. I'm not here to answer that, but perhaps it is, right? And maybe in the future, is there a way that we can train better to not have those things, right? So you got to go deeper into the data. You might have to read the report as to why that dislocation happened. So pretty cool insight. We really like the body map. Manish wanted me to show that one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clear my filter. Okay. And then you can see we've got some was that me? Officer and subject demographics there, as well as the age distribution. All right. Do this. I have to go. Sorry, I think I'm going to have to go back. All right, try not to get dizzy.
Cool. If you stick around. Yeah. Are you guys in consent decree or anything like that? Okay.
All right, so we left off on building the trust and legitimacy with the annual reports. And dove in to get a little detail there. That was in case my live report didn't work. So just real quick, we also do, make sure it's right. So this is the crisis report. The first one was the use of force, and we dove into particular crisis events. But we do some frequency distribution. It's pretty normalized there. If you look at the use of force for those crises, we're right around 2%. It's pretty low. I think the perception is that it's much, much higher. And then on the bottom there, you can see, it's a pretty even distribution between crises and non-crises. So I don't think we're necessarily using more on crisis events. We talked about training a little bit. From the annual report here, we have the trends in CIT, or crisis intervention training, are up. And then this is our stops and frisks, or Terry stops, comparing 2018 to 2019. We'll get into a little bit more about Terry stops later, but as I mentioned, the goal would be an arrest. Right? You can see the arrests as a percentage are up, but admittedly, 25% of all people stopped and frisked, it's kind of a lowish number. But we're not going to dive into why it's that low, but I mean, in New York City, I think it's under 20, and I saw that in the news recently. Still questioning it. So, moving on to the next area where we're using Tableau is for the community engagement, and we're using Tableau Public. I will give the web addresses at the end if anyone wants them. They're all on. You can get them all from the same page there that's illustrated on the left. And I'm going to now go live there. Everyone using Tableau Public? Yeah.
Maybe while Greg's doing that, are there any folks in the audience from Seattle? Awesome. Washington in general? Fantastic. All right, cool.
So, like as I said, display this later. This is just to throw it out there for the public that here's the data. We're putting ourselves out there. The one interesting thing that people might find is where is it in my neighborhood? So the geographic categories over here are pretty big. By the precinct, you can drill down. I should do it here. Sorry. So I live up in that area. And it's pretty evenly distributed across the city. And as I mentioned, we put our data set out there, and then we also have the annual report out there. So I'm just going to click through those real quick. So there's use of force dashboard, the crisis contact. This is interesting. Has anyone ever seen this? I got this morning. I was like, oh, great, perfect for my presentation. Who's the administrator? Yeah? For Tableau Public? Yeah? So it's on both of these. I don't know. And then we have a Terry Stop one. And the Terry Stop one, again, it's throwing out there for the public of those. Where was it? Sorry, I'll scroll down. When weapons were found, and the percentage of arrests. And again, all those data sets are available. Switching back. All right, so another area where we're using it is for operational readiness. So command staff have one place to go to get pretty much all the information about deploying their people to the streets. And as a result of deploying them, what were the outcomes? So this is the sergeant's dashboard, and I am going to test the limits of my internet capabilities. Sorry, I see you took a picture. Oh, it's still up there. Okay, I'll pause, because I'm going to go to it live. Good? Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know how to close. I got to close the PowerPoint to get to my desktop. Oh boy, I can't believe this is working. All right. All right, so back to the patrol sergeant's dashboard. So this is live. We're using some cool things on this one. First off, row-level security. We didn't really want sergeants looking at each other's people. So I don't know if anyone's using row-level security, but Tableau gives you the login. I'm impersonating a sergeant right now, and this is her squad. Oops. I gave it away. You'll know who she is anyhow, because I think we're going to drill in. So in the upper left is the early intervention system alerts. So has anyone in her squad triggered an alert? And we had officer-involved shootings up there just as a demo of capabilities, but this one sort of says the different reasons why, and I'm using a viz and a viz to display what those triggers were, so I can get more reports on the dash. Plus also, if someone wanted to print it out, you're not really revealing too much about the details. We discourage the printing out. So moving into the next section is the training. So going back to that subject, are your people ready to be deployed to the street? Do they have the training they need? And so all officers are required to have some form of less lethal weapon on them, but they also need to be trained on that weapon, right? So going across the list there, because it's all coded, ECD, that is taser. Then you have impact weapon, which is probably a club, and then OC is pepper spray. You can see not many people there are ECD or didn't want that. Tasers are a tricky weapon. So I think I don't know how many people want to carry those. But moving on to, everyone's got handgun training there, and the rifle and shotgun are optional. And we have one officer who's not CIT trained. So that's something the sergeant would want to look into. So moving on, we have in the middle there average response time by priority. So that is for the 911 calls, and I have a total there of 16,000 for our time period for this squad. How are the numbers? And then if you look down here to the squad detail, I'm using the box and whiskers to talk about who's arriving early and who's arriving late. I don't know that either is good. I think you want to be in the middle there. If you're consistently arriving too early, that might be public safety danger. And then again, I'm using viz and viz throughout here. So this is just a breakdown of were they dispatched or did they drive by and see something and call it in themselves. And then we got the subjects and KPIs around them of the consent decree, the use of force, the crises and the Terry stops. And then they can compare these back to the rest of the city or other squads. And then again, it flows up to the lieutenant's dashboard and the captain's dashboard. They can compare across them. And then again, I'm using viz and viz down here to get some details. So for example, on the Terry stops here, you could see the breakout in color-coded. What were they stopping people for, and what were the outcomes of those stops? Again, we're trying for arrests. Or if the percentage is low of an arrest, then why are you stopping so many people? I hovered over the wrong thing, didn't I? That was crisis, sorry. We'll touch on crisis then. So crisis, does anyone guess what a good outcome is? No? Crisis averted, that's a good one. But I think the person's already in crisis. So if they're already in crisis, what do you want to? De-escalation, yes. But at the same time, you want to get services for the person, right? So if they're having a chemical dependency issue, maybe get them in for some treatment. Mental health issue, we have a grant right now. I think we have up from 4, we have 8 now mental health professionals that we can dispatch if we can keep that person around long enough to help them. So we're looking for referred for services there, and there's a couple different categories, such as detox, such as mental health counseling. Police are being asked to do a lot. It's a lot to take in. Any questions on that one?
How do the officers feel about this dashboard in particular? Like the relative frequencies, are they conducting more stops or more,
How do they like the feedback?
yeah, how do they like the feedback?
I don't think anyone loves, especially those, what a lot of people perceive as negative areas, the feedback.
Right, so if there's
Yeah, so I can't speak to their perception of it. What I can speak to is that in the training videos for these, as well as anytime we give a talk about them and go over it, we stress this is not punitive in nature. It's just to inform.
Yeah, I'll add to that a little bit, right? When we were building this stuff, this question came up a lot, right? Do police officers really want to share this? Are they comfortable sharing some of the statistics? And in my conversation with the chief of police at the time, right, her thought was transparency is more important than worrying about that, right? So I thought that was absolutely the right leadership guidance to set, and I was happy we were able to go down that path.
We're not really measuring that. I would say the behavior more that we're looking at is, are they being trained, or if they're more aware of the training or the procedures that need to be done to make sure it's done right. Because when I had you read the consent decree piece, it's like everyone that's involved in this wants to do the right thing. And just sometimes, either because of circumstance or some kind of predetermined factor, it doesn't turn out quite so. So then what do you do? And I think that's on the individual. No. Right. Yeah. Narratives, yeah. So those are highly sensitive because they'll sometimes take, and I don't know the technical term, but they'll take like a previous arrest report or a prosecutorial document and paste it in there for supporting information, and highly sensitive. So we don't really put that up on the dashboard. That data is available for analysis. Right. We might, one area that we might perform on that, if we just want to talk about reporting and analysis, is do some machine learning on that. Oh good, someone wants to meet. I'm sorry, I'm promoted into work. And I lost my train of thought. So the uses of force are all reviewed numerous times. And it's quite time consuming. And as a result of the reviews, they said, yeah, that was all justified, or perhaps it wasn't justified, and this is the action we need to take. A very manual process. So we're looking into using some machine learning to look at those narratives, since you mentioned them, and ask ourselves, were we able to predict whether it was justified or not? And again, that's, the machine's not going to make that determination. It's just going to point out to someone that when you review, maybe you want to do it a different way, if you missed it. Yes? We're not there yet.
What kind of tools are you looking into? I deal with a lot of open-ended information, so I'm curious.
I really can't speak to it too much. We have a criminologist who's been doing some prototyping of it. I more manage the program and write some of the Tableau reports. Sorry. Oh, about 1,700, 1,800 officers, right? So let's try to stick to this, and then I'll do general Q&A at the end. Sorry, no, that's good. I didn't make myself clear. Did you have a question? Okay, sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so we're going away from... Oh, yeah. We're going to go back to this. Sorry, and there's the other thing we set up. We did some drilling here so that the sergeant could go into the individual officer. And I just wanted to touch on this because we went a little deeper with the training. So it's not just those high-level topics. We have some more in the middle there, training for the last 2 years that they've received. And then we did some indicators on there where they're missing something. So the red X is indicating that that one is overdue. And we have some emergency contact information on here as well. But the rest of them it's pretty much the same dashboard we just saw, minus that box and whiskers. So you can see training is very important and integral part of the reporting. And we're out of here. Okay, so going back now. Oh, it sent me back. Sorry. So happy that worked. All right. So as I mentioned, we have a lieutenant's version, looking down at the different sergeants that report to them and their squads. And then we have captains. And just everything you just saw was about patrol. So we have a whole nother area to the house, obviously detectives looking into cases. And so we have an investigative dashboard as well. Not really going to talk too much about it. It's just another aspect of policing and another set of data that we pulled in. And in the middle there, you could see what we're looking at is that the open cases that they have, closed cases, and the goal there is to refer for prosecution. So you want to build a good case. All right, governance. So just touch on this briefly. Like I mentioned, we throw a lot of errors, some more important than others. So I'm using Tableau alerts. So if you trigger the alert, it'll send an email and let you know that you have. In this one, we had a functional exception. So the source record key was wrong, and that's on one of the three topics. I think that's a use of force. The format of that number is incorrect. Yes, they don't control that on the source system. And then saving the city money and the legal department time, since we have all that data available, we are searching the 911 system now. So a common question people will have for a subject's name or for a location in the city. This one is 420 Terry Street. I don't know quite where that is, but another common one would be Seattle Center. It's a place where people get together. It's where the Space Needle is. Probably a lot of crime happens there, and like maybe the news wants to see trends, so they'll do a request for records on that location. So these are all the calls for 2018 that occurred there, and they can just export it out of Tableau. All right, so back to our story. As I mentioned, our progress is continuing. However, we're being found to be within compliance, particularly around the use of force.
Hey, Greg, can you also talk a little bit about the financial impact of being compliant versus not being compliant?
I probably can't speak too much to that.
I mean, it's in the millions, right? So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the millions, right?
Yes.
It's a big deal, right? Having a consent decree and not being compliant, costs the city and the department, I don't want to quote an exact number, but north of like $5 million a year. So it's a big deal to get compliant, and Seattle was one of the first cities to get there. So we're very thrilled to make that happen and save the city a bunch of money, save the PD a bunch of money that can be reapplied to better uses in the city. So,
Sorry. So then, along with crisis, and then the Terry stops. So just a little bit about what's next. As I mentioned, some machine learning on helping the force review unit look at those cases, make sure that they're all within expectations. We're looking at doing some disparity analysis with the Terry stops, because it's on the lower percentage in regards to the arrests, but are we doing it proportionally across population in the city? And then we want to replace our early intervention system, doing hopefully some machine learning there. That's a little bit further down the road. The one we have right now, spreadsheets, and we're relying on still some paper records on that one.